Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com, live at Edleys in 5 Points, lovely East Nashville location of the best barbecue in and around Middle Tennessee, one of 8 locations. Phenomenal place to eat. You know it well. 5 Points here, Sylvan Park, Donaldson, Franklin, and Berry Farms, which is kind of my home base. Franklin at the factory, Gallatin, 12 South Nolensville. Eat here. You'll come to crave it. It'll be a regular spot for you once or twice a week at least. People over here eating the fried ribs next to me, making me super hungry because I've had nothing to eat today, but I'm sustaining on my Diet Coke diet from Leon behind the bar here, who always takes great care of me. I have some Tampa Bay people next to me asking me a little bit about the Bucks. Find your Edleys location at edleysbbq.com. Also sponsored, as always, by ZEN Sports. Best place to bet if you're in Tennessee. We'll talk more about them lately. Welcome in. Happy to see you. Lots to talk about on the Titans front. Titans against backup quarterbacks. They'll obviously be seeing one this weekend with Mac Jones coming to town with the Jaguars, with Trevor Lawrence out for the season now. Got bad concussion from the Azeez Al-Shaair hit, but had shoulder issue before that, right? So they're going to take care of that. Will Levis taking sacks. His toughness, something we haven't talked about a great deal. We'll get into that. Young inside linebackers not ready. Punt return solutions on the horizon. All your questions and much more. JT Runke helping me out in the background, which I much appreciate. Let's get to work here. A lot of your questions funneling in here. Feel free to retweet. We'll get a bigger audience in here, which is always good. Creates better questions and a lot more. Logan wants to ban the quarterback slide. It's a dangerous play. It's not as dangerous as quarterbacks not sliding and taking regular hits. So I disagree with you there. Backup quarterbacks. Titans have bad history generally against some replacement quarterbacks and some low-ranking quarterbacks. They get Mac Jones, 5.57 yards per attempt, not pushing the ball downfield. He started 2 games. He's played in 3, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 70.6 rating. Not very impressive. This is a Titans team that's lost to Malik Willis, lost to Joe Flacco, beat Tyler Huntley, who was really a 3rd or 4th stringer for a Miami team that was just incredibly injury depleted. In Mac Jones's 2 starts, the Jaguars lost to Minnesota, lost to Detroit, scored 7 points in one, 6 points in the other. Not a threatening football team. Titans favored as they should be here. A very, very ugly matchup. Jeffrey Simmons does not seem very impressed. Generally, you try to say nice things about the opponent, and he wasn't insulting by any means, but here's what Jeffrey Simmons had to say about Mac Jones. JT, if we will.
He was a first round, I think he was, and he's a young quarterback. He's still in this league, and like I said, it's the thing that I done saw. First off, we're gonna have to be able to stop the run, but if we get him to passing down, like I said, I'm sure we'll be able to get out of him, take away his first read, and we'll be able to get to him. Like I said, he's able to run the ball, but I don't think we too much worried about him just running the ball. But we know that take away his first read, or if you turn on the tape, you take away that, he ready to take off with it.
So I mean, it's great. Take away his first read, and he'll run. They should be able to get to him. He's talking like they're a team that gets to the quarterback, which they don't. So pass rush is a big issue for this team. no consistency. I'm working on a story about Landry. We'll talk about Landry in a little bit. Nobody's rushed well at the same time, right? Simmons has come back to life. He wasn't good against Washington. He's come back to life, but his good stretch. He's the only guy that's kind of like had good games, spotty throughout the season. Landry, the last 4 games, hasn't done a damn thing. Simmons, the first 4 games, didn't do a damn thing. T'Vondre Sweat, had a good first game and then didn't do anything for a good while. So Mac Jones is the kind of guy that you would presume the Titans would do well against, which is always dangerous because you presumed that the Oilers would do well to Ryan Leaf, who won 4 games in his NFL career, one of them against the Oilers. Johnny Manziel, you presumed the Titans would do well against, and he won 2 games in his career, one against Titans. Zach Wilson's a guy you would have presumed the Titans would have done well against, and he won 12 games in his NFL career so far, one of them against the Titans. Jonathan Merck is watching from a flight back from Guadalajara, which is awesome. Hope you had a good trip. Question about Burks. We'll get to Burks a little bit this week. Robert wants to know about Chidobe Awuzie. He should be back this week. This week, which is in fact in this year. Why did Rand draft a running back with no ACL in his knees in the 3rd round? That's a little bit of an exaggeration. There's no ACL in one knee in the 3rd round. Spears. That's not been Spears' issue. But yeah, you don't imagine the guy's got a 10-year career ahead of him. Jim says Herndon's most recent post indicates Levis has 2 more years as his contract. Is it 2 more years or 1 more year? He's drafted. He's playing his 2nd season. Rookie contracts are 4 years. First rounders have a 5th-year option after 3 years. So Levis has two more years. This is a good point. Stewart says Titans defense hasn't been particularly impressive against running quarterbacks. That's why Simmons is emphasizing that Mac Jones isn't much of a running quarterback. Why did Rand give Snead $76 million to get 23 tackles? Well, obviously Rand wasn't anticipating that Snead would get hurt and miss a lot of time. So there's that. We'll take this Burks question, and I'll hit my Burks thing. Logan asks, what's the story on Burks? Why did he wait 6 weeks to get surgery? Well, Burks' initial injury involved like a loose ACL. It wasn't, maybe it was torn a bit, but it wasn't like a clear ACL tear. So they needed to, have specialists look at it. And obviously they thought there were different courses of action. Everybody seems to think that every injury is cut and dried, like Snead's was cut and dried. Snead had the injury, gets the diagnosis, must go on IR. Some of these things, there's some. Has nobody ever had a diagnosis? Well, they say the doctor says, well, you've got the flu, take this medicine and you'll be fine in X number of days. And actually you felt better earlier than that, or you felt shitty longer than he suspected you would. Medicine is not, and these things are not exact. On Burks, a lot of people responded to the Burks story that he had ACL surgery a couple of weeks ago as like, well, that's the end of Burks' Titans career. Look, I would like for it to be the end of Burks' career, but the Titans don't have a lot of receivers under contract next year. Now, hopefully they re-sign NWI. Hopefully they upgrade on Boyd and they draft somebody. But the only, Jaquan Jackson's under contract. Calvin Ridley's under contract. But Treylon Burks is under contract for next year. Treylon Burks is in his 3rd year. They surely won't exercise his 5th-year option this spring, but he's under contract next year. $4.6 million cap hit, $2.7 million base. So they could save $2.7 million. But still, they have to have him around for the duration of his rehabbing the ACL. So it's not automatic that he's gone. They have to have him around through the rehab of the ACL, and then they'll see where they are with wide receivers. I'm not saying I expect him to have any kind of turnaround or make any kind of contribution, but if he's the sixth wide receiver on your roster, Colton Dowell's under contract for next year. I don't know what you're expecting out of him. It's not a no-brainer that he's gone. What about that stupid backup Dwayne's asking from Minnesota years ago that lit up the Titans? Name escapes me. Name escapes me as well. So, special teams here. Trevor, go forth. How long does it take once the season's over for Colt Anderson to be fired for his incompetence? I mean, I think it'd probably take a week. They have to have their meetings and sort through their stuff and all of that. Robert wants to know, has NWI priced himself out of the Titans' reach? Well, why would he price himself out of the Titans' reach? The Titans aren't poverty team salary cap-wise any longer. I think he'd be $8 to $10 million guy probably a year, and there's no reason the Titans can't afford that. Tennessee versus Jacksonville. It's two teams that have been bad, but per Nick Suss of the Tennessean on a football show this morning, another fine 440 network podcast, the only Titans-Jaguars December meetings with losing records actually came between 2012 and 2015 in the Gabbert Locker eras. And Nick's research said, interestingly, those two did not actually play head-to-head, I would presume because of eras. By Nick's account, this is the third worst matchup in Nissan Stadium history. The Titans and the Jags in 2014 met here. Both were 2-11. And in 2005, the Titans were 3-9 and the Texans were 1-11. Raise your hand if you were at either of those games, and will be at Sunday's game. Another gem with a 3-9 Titans team and a 2-10 Jaguars game. I pointed out this week, I was driving into my Wednesday appearance on Robbie and Rexrow. I'm 102.5 The Game. And I drive on 65. I was coming north into town on 65. And there's a billboard that always has a Titans, digital billboard always has a Titans advertisement on it. Hey! And that's my Tampa Bay guy. Always has a Titans advertisement on it, usually for the next home game's tickets. And it was a Bengals billboard. It was selling tickets to the Bengals game. It skipped right by the Jaguars game. I thought this was very funny. So I pointed it out on the radio, and within 40 minutes, somebody texted us that it had been changed to the Jaguars game. So I don't know if that's the Titans slipping in what they give the billboard company or the billboard company skipping ahead. But like most of us, they wanted to skip right past. Somebody wanted to skip right past Titans Jaguars and move on to seeing Joe Burrow. So that's pretty funny. Jonathan Burke wants to know my thoughts on Azeez Al-Shaair. I think 3 games are a little harsh. I thought 2 games would have been a more appropriate penalty. Look, he went harder with the forearm to the head area, neck area, whatever it was, than he needed to go. But I do think he's in a no man's land there, closing hard. With the quarterback sliding at the time that he did, where it's a very difficult play time-wise. But giving the extra stuff is the problem there. TK says he's 100% expecting the Titans to make Mac Jones look like Tom Brady. Interesting. Robert thinks he can get front row to this game for $50. And I immediately thought $50 is too inexpensive. I saw, by the way, on an adjacent topic, like $12 seats for the Big Ten championship game in Chicago. Now, the Big Ten championship game is Oregon and Penn State. So Now, if you're an Oregon fan, you're not going to the Big Ten championship game unless you're a huge money person that has a lot of time that's going to follow Oregon to everything, right? Oregon's going to have a bye into the final 8. So you want to go to that game, but you might hold out, wait for them ideally to win that game, go to a Final 4 or semifinal or college football final. There are a lot of games that you want to go to. Penn State is not close to Chicago. I don't know how many Penn State alumni are in Chicago, but they were arguing. I'm sorry, the game is in Indianapolis. And the argument was being made by Albert Breer and others. Yeah, my bad, Logan. The argument was being made by Albert Breer and others that it should just permanently be in Chicago, like the SEC championship game being in Atlanta. Lots of Big Ten alumni in Chicago, and so you start with that alumni base and then have people travel to Chicago. Well, there are no Oregon people. I mean, there's no big, high percentage of Oregon people in Chicago. I don't think there's a big percentage of Penn State people in Chicago. Indianapolis, at least, is indoors. It's an easier city to get around. You don't need to it's pretty easy to fly into Indianapolis and take an Uber or Lyft. If I said SEC championship, I meant Big Ten. But, I think it's the same thing with the SEC adding, whether it's in Atlanta or on the occasion you might bring it to Nashville, the SEC championship game, Oklahoma fans in Nashville, not the way there are, the traditional SEC teams. So as you expand these conferences, some of these teams get in the championship game. Texas and Texas A&M playing in Atlanta. What kind of alumni bases do they have in Atlanta? Texas or Texas A&M? None. I mean, not none, but it's not like it's a home setting. You're right, Logan. I didn't misspeak. Logan says it's a geography issue of these mega conferences. And also, these championship games are less important now than anything. If your team's going to win or lose that championship, they're probably going to a 12-team playoff. And a 12-team playoff is those games are more appealing than a conference championship game, aren't they? Wouldn't you rather go to see your team in college playoff games? I would. Punt return. We get back to Colt Anderson here. Colt Anderson. Just struggling. I'd say 90% sure Mason Kinsey's getting called up for this game. Jaquan Jackson. I don't know if he's inactive. I don't see what Jaquan Jackson can do for the offense if he's not returning that Mason Kinsey can't do. And Mason Kinsey's going to reliably catch the ball and do more with it than Jaquan Jackson. He's got 5 fumbles, and he's lost a fumble or a muff in the last 2 games. Colt Anderson was very particular about differentiating muffs from fumbles. That's all well and good if you want to nitpick. Both of them are ball control issues. Catch the punt, and then don't fumble it as you become a ball carrier. Colt said he was surprised that Jaquan muffed the punt against Houston 2 weeks ago. And I said, why would you be surprised? He mishandled the ball 3 times and fumbled 3 times before that. So it makes no sense the way this guy talked. Anderson, here's Anderson attempting to, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. He said this an hour and a half ago. Muffing versus fumbling from the mind of Colt Anderson. Let's dissect this after we hear it.
No, at the end of the day, it's a turnover, right? Yeah, but it just, if you think about it, muffing is just securing the catch, and then, fumbles securing the ball when you're the runner. So number one job, secure the catch and then take care of it when you're the runner.
I mean, do you care if the guy muffs it or fumbles it? I think everybody just cares, like, if he loses the ball. If he loses it because he can't catch the punt, that's bad. If he loses it because he can't run with the ball unsecured, that's bad. They're all lost possessions. I mean, he filled his 5 minutes talking. There you go, TK. If you can't hold on the ball, does it matter if it's a muff or a fumble? Help Colt Anderson get through his 7 minutes with us. Turnovers eternal, you know. Jackson's out of a job right now. Now he's going to resurface at some point, if not this year, next year, you know. But hopefully Kinsey can control it and do a better job. And Mason Kinsey, I mean, there's a certain annoyance to the fact that a guy like that has managed to be around on this team so long and they haven't found a guy with a better ceiling. But he can do that job reliably. And he's 2 games away from getting an NFL pension for a guy that's been a 5-year practice squad guy. He's going to earn an NFL pension if he can get this game and one more game out of it. Bob O'Benson says Colt Anderson isn't the problem. It's the fact that Rand completely ignored the back end of the roster to sign 4 guys, 3 of whom don't even play. Well, I agree, but it's allowed to be more than one thing. And so Colt Anderson's given who he's given, and he's not been able to coach those people up into competent special teams play. And that's a problem. That's his job. Now, and I wouldn't be taking Colt Anderson's advice based on his inability to get guys to perform at a moderate level on who he needs. But yes, Rand Carthon completely downplayed the value of back-end roster special teams guys. And Hassan Haskins is not an all-time special teamer. We're not talking about Steve Tasker. But he's got to be better. Michael Spain says, we need to have someone with the floor of not fumbling. We can worry about ceiling later. When does the floor rise? I mean, how many years do the Titans go where the floor is catching a punt? Kyle Phillips had how long, and Jaquan Jackson's going to get how long? When does the floor become get 10 yards after you catch the ball? I'd like to cover a team that has that again. Is that unreasonable ask that you can't get to that point? It's ridiculous how long it's taking. Ridiculous. Anderson did say something like, I thought players knew what they were supposed to be doing early in the year. I thought players knew what they were supposed to be doing. I mean, those are fireable words. Like he should be walking back. What Titans position, TK asks, had the lowest floor every year but still fails? O-line, wide receiver room, or special teams? Well, this question, TK, depends on the time frame that we're discussing. So are we talking about Titans franchise-wide? Wide receiver. Last 5 years? Offensive line. Special teams, I don't think you compete with offensive line late. Let's see what else we got on the list here. Let's talk about Harold Landry a little bit. I think, and I've talked with Blake Bedingfield, our scout, about this. I think he's lost his burst. He leads the team with 6 sacks, right? Is there a quieter a team leader in sacks in the league than Harold Landry? Last four games, done really nothing. He's not an impactful player. Certainly not a $17 million salary this year guy. Certainly not a $23.8 million salary cap guy. PFF says amongst edge rushers with significant snaps this year, he is 62nd with a 49.9 pass rush grade. Harold Landry's been, a really good guy for this franchise. Great worker. Hard not to like the work ethic, and the few words that he says carry weight and meaning. But we've talked time and time again about the idea that the Titans are going to need to draft a premier edge rusher as one of their priorities, maybe the first-round priority. They've only drafted, in 25 years of being the Tennessee Titans, they drafted Javon Curse in the first year of that as an edge rusher, and Derek Morgan. 2 edge rushers in the first round. Now, we know for a good period of time there, 10, maybe 12 years, Jim Washburn was the offensive line coach, and he could turn guys like Carlos Hall into effective pass rushers. And, they had Kyle Vandenbosch fall into their lap and got production out of Jason Babin and some people like that. Still, that's not enough drafting. And I was thinking they need this guy to pair with Harold Landry. And now I'm wondering if they don't need this guy to replace Harold Landry. He's expensive again next year. You still got to be, they have money to spend, but they still got to be efficient with this money. And Harold Landry looks to me like a guy who doesn't have it anymore. Doesn't have it. He's not influencing games this year. He needs that burst off the edge and the speed. And raise your hand if you've seen 3 times this year where he's been sudden off the line of scrimmage and surprised a tackle and been in the backfield in a way that you were like, whoo. I just haven't seen it. And I think it's a problem. He's a diminished player. I'm going to write about him probably tomorrow. Jeffrey's going back to special teams here. Why don't we use better players on special teams like some other franchises do, starters? I don't think it's happening as much as you think, and I did talk to guys about this, and I did talk about it in a podcast. I talked to NWI, who's a good special teamer. But when NWI is playing a full slate of offensive plays, it's just too big a workload. And if he's running, on 3rd and 6, if he's running a route to turn around and immediately go cover a punt is not practical, really. And to ask a bunch of guys to do that in both directions, it's not practical. I asked somebody like Arden Key, he said it's just not. It's not really in the realm of possibility. It's got to be a subset of guys who are the anchors of it, and some situational guys, But there are guys who are willing to do it, but it's not a practical thing. And Godstinct says he doesn't think that there's a single guy in this draft that would be a huge difference maker at edge. I've taken one for the team. I mean, Simmons universally was playing poorly early in the season. I also say that Simmons, he wasn't good in this last game, but who was on defense, has played substantially better since the bye. Substantially better. And Simmons is now Jeffrey Simmons again. But Jeffrey Simmons played very poorly early. And Harold Landry's having a bad season. He's just having a bad season. Now, you can hope it's a bad season and that maybe he finishes strong. But I don't see any cause to believe it. And I'd love to see it. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Harold Landry. I think Harold Landry has been a very good player for this organization. But I mentioned Derek Morgan, and I don't even know if he's Derek Morgan-esque right now. And the Derek Morgan used to always get near the quarterback. And, they claim that look how influential he is around the quarterback. I don't feel like Harold Landry's even being influential around the quarterback now. Now, you go to this last game and they didn't have a chance to be influential around the quarterback because they weren't they're busy getting run on. Let me tell you about ZEN Sports. ZEN Sports, go download the app, ZEN Sports, sign up, use the code TNPAUL, TNPAUL. Sign up, make a bet, $10 or less. Get a free year at paulkuharsky.com. It's a pretty sweet deal, $81 value. If you lose that first bet, and you can bet up to $1,000 on something that's up to plus 500 odds, win it, man, you are set. Lose it, well, within 24 hours, that money's back in your account. So pretty nice entree into a new betting app. And we've got some picks for you. And we've given you some pretty good picks. Miami giving 6 against the Jets at home. This is my favorite game. I feel most strongly about it. And it's co-signed by JT Rumke, who gave you a really good pick last week for the Thursday night game. Saw Cleveland's upset. That was of the Steelers, correct? Listen, Miami lost last week to the Packers by 13. Miami doesn't play great against good teams. But before that, they beat the Rams by 8. The Dolphins did. They beat the Raiders by 15. They beat the Patriots by 19. Well, guess which basket the Jets fall into. Not a good opponent. Miami against bad teams wins right now. And I like that pick a lot. So I would go to Zen Sports and make that pick. And JT's offering us a bonus pick. He likes the Bears +4 at San Francisco. I thought about this pick. Bears coming off firing their coach. They've had a mini bye here after Thanksgiving Day game. And I could see that pick. San Francisco just got wiped in the snow. They're minus McCaffrey. There's a lot wrong with them. I just wonder about recovery for a Kyle Shanahan team after being embarrassed. But teams playing their first game under a new interim coach, I think, tend to respond pretty well. So JT gives you the Bears +4 at San Francisco. Zen Sports, no danger first wager. Get the app, sign up using TN Paul, and get to work there. They're a great sponsor of mine. Love the people there. They've been great to me. I hope you'll be good to them. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and in Tennessee to bet. Great folks over there. Young linebackers. A lot of people have wanted to see James Williams, Cedric Gray. Not as much clamoring for Otis Reese. I think we know a little bit more about who Otis Reese is. But James Williams and Cedric Gray, rookies. But Luke Gifford was the guy who got put in when Kenneth Murray left the Commanders game for a while, hurt. Luke Gifford played 9 snaps. Otis Reese played 8 snaps. I think there was a little substituting for Baker there as well, Jerome Baker. But they turned to Gifford. They did not turn to James Williams or Cedric Gray. And I asked Brian Callahan, why not? Why not the kids? He said it's a confidence that Gifford with the green dot and being able to make the calls and get everybody lined up. That's a lot to put on a rookie off the bench. But certainly there's going to be some opportunities for those guys to play, and they're going to have some chances that they maybe would not have had otherwise due to injuries. And they've got to rise to the occasion and earn that trust and earn the right to be able to be the guy that goes in there when we need them to. So that's all part of the process. So that sounds like, hey, if they have a practice week to get ready to be green dot, have more responsibility and all of that, then we'd be willing to go with them. Well, when are they going to pull Kenneth Murray from a start to give James Williams or Cedric Gray a game? They're not. When are they going to pull Baker to give one of those guys a game? I don't think they are. So maybe they give them half a game and they have a practice week to get ready for it. But the fact that they go to Luke Gifford, who's a special teamer, first and foremost, and not particularly notable linebacker, with in their 6th to last game in a dreadful season, in a terrible game where they were down 28 points and clearly were not going to make it back, make it into a competitive game. And there were, 9 snaps to be had. They didn't know how many snaps, but it wasn't going to be a lot of snaps. And they gave him to Gifford, and they didn't give him to James Williams or Cedric Gray. That tells me James Williams and Cedric Gray aren't very far along. That tells me that not to get your hopes up about those guys, that they're going to do very much for you. Williams played 20 special team snaps. Gray played 13 special team snaps. That's where they are. That's who they are right now. I wouldn't expect a heck of a lot. Hey, retweet on Twitter now. If you're watching on YouTube, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I appreciate you on there. If you ask questions on that YouTube, I go and pay attention to it and try to interact there. I appreciate it. And if you're listening on Apple, on iHeart, on Spotify, do what you can do there. Subscribe, rate, review. All of it helps the cause, and I appreciate it. I love having these conversations with you and unloading all of the information that I compile during the week and topics that I have some opinions on, which include Titans' lack of use of the no huddle, which I'll get into here in a little bit after I take some more questions. Also want to talk to you about Levis taking sacks. What's the conversation like, Ed Henry wants to know, at the end of the year with Amy, if Callahan doesn't include changing out the special teams coach? Will his hand be forced? I don't know what kind of case he can make for. I mean, this is where the collaboration thing, Ed, gets very interesting, right? It's a happy collaboration, right? And I don't understand how Brian Callahan could want Colt Anderson back, but he could say, Colt had nobody to work with. The bottom of the roster was really bad, and you didn't give me special teamers. You didn't give Colt special teamers who could do the job. Well, that's, it's not pointing a finger at Rand. It's stating a fact about Rand. Rand's in charge of the 53. Rand didn't give us 43 to 53 to play good special teams with. Well, that's, collaborative conversation, but it's also, blame casting to a degree, right? That's the only defense you could offer of Colt Anderson, but I don't see how he could survive. And so if he says, look, Colt should stay, and we should give him better players, should she intervene? Absolutely. Could Rand intervene? I'm not positive about Callahan's control of his staff. I may have reported that and don't know it, or it may have been reported and I don't recall it. But I think collaboratively they should come up with that Colt Anderson should be fired, and that his replacement should be a more experienced special teams coach in the league who should be given better back-end talent on the roster, and that Rand's failure to give better special teams players to Brian Callahan and to Colt Anderson is evidence of his inexperience at putting together a roster. And so the Titans suffered from inexperience on 3 levels here. Rand Carthon, in terms of assembling the back end of a roster. Brian Callahan maybe not being able to chime up enough about that, or not recognizing it himself and being of influence. I don't know. Maybe he tried. We don't know. And Colt Anderson not having better people to coach, even though it seems pretty clear he's not a very good coach. Tristan Riley wants to draft the tight end. I think an impact tight end would be nice on this team. I think tight ends have been of more influence, but still, this team has a first rounder, a second rounder, and 2 fourth rounders, I believe. And I can't rank tight end in those first 4 spots, given what you would want to draft and develop as core people to go with Latham, to go with Sweat, to go with Brownlee. You got to have an edge rusher in there. You got to have a tackle in there. You got to have a receiver in there. I don't know in what order and all of that. You don't know who's available. You don't know who's drafting around you. All of those things. You can't predetermine who goes in what slot. But an upgrade at tight end would be nice. But I don't rank it as a priority along with those other things. Also, you have to keep in account right guard, where they probably would like to get better than Ravens. I'd like him to re-sign Ravens and have him at least as depth. To keep him as depth. With the potential to start, depending on what happens with the other guy. What do they do in free agency before that? I haven't looked at the tight end list there. And, it's a 3 wide receiver offense, though, again, and I've written or talked about, the tight ends have had a bigger role than I expected in that. Jimmy Morris, how you doing? Do the Titans try to extend Nick Westbrook Akina in season? I don't know. They should be having conversations now, but a guy who's breaking out like that, if I'm Nick Westbrook Akina, I wouldn't be particularly interested in having a conversation right now. I wouldn't be particularly interested in having a conversation before I reach free agency, unless you bowl me over. I mean, come give me a really generous offer and give me 3 for 30 with a good portion of it as a bonus, and I'll listen. We think the Titans are going to approach him with that. A lot of people are putting up questions that don't include full context, which is hard for me. Let's look at no huddle. I don't understand why this team doesn't no huddle. And I think I have a reason that it doesn't no huddle. I don't think they're capable of no huddling effectively. And I think it's a huge disappointment. Let's listen to what Nick Holtz said about no huddling and then break it down. Because, look, I don't think they're coming back against the Commanders down 28 in 20 minutes. But, I don't remember what the score was at halftime. But wouldn't it be a hell of a strategy to come out of the locker and say, hey, we're going to hurry up the whole second half. We're going to maximize things. We're going to try to get additional possessions. We're going to change the pace. Now, they played better in the second half. They've mentioned several times they won the second half 12-10. Well, if you lose the first half 28-3 or 28-7 or whatever the hell it was, it doesn't really matter that you won the second half 12-10. And there are no standings for second half wins. And if there were, the Titans would really suck in those standings as well, because only now are they showing some life in the second half. But let's listen to Nick Holtz about how often the Titans no huddle and why they wouldn't do something like that.
There's different parts of that. Well, we've been in no huddle probably, I'd say, if I was ballparking, under 5%, maybe something right around there, maybe a little more, but right around that number. I think there's 2 different things. One, when you're down, you're kind of getting your butt kicked. You want to make sure you're running good plays, kind of into good looks. So if you go 3 and out and you throw it 3 times, you've done no huddle and you took 25 seconds on the clock and you just gave them right back. So we tried to increase the tempo a little bit, but some of that, and then I think as it would have kept going, we would have probably gone a little more no huddle as it went, but just kind of the decision we made in the moment.
Shouldn't we be able to run good plays out of good looks?
Well, for sure, there's part of that, but then at some point you're getting there, you're moving protections, you're making all that communication on the line, you're sitting up there, he's communicating, and it can become cumbersome at some points. So we have those mechanics and we have those things involved in the offense, but we just kind of chose to stay with a similar tempo. And when we got it back to 2 scores, kind of try to keep it in that range. And if we would have converted some red zone touchdowns there instead of those field goals, maybe it is a different story.
So Nick Holtz says the Titans didn't go into high-tempo 2-minute offense against the Commanders down big because you want to make sure you're running good plays into good looks. And there's a lot of moving protections, calls on the line, communication on the line that can become cumbersome. You got to be able to do all that stuff. And they've got to be able to go into 2-minute and high-speed offense faster, more often. He said they do it 5% of the time, he thinks. I mean, that's just not enough. And I think they're not doing it because they can't do it. And I think that's an indictment. Got to be able to do it. We've got to see it more. For a team that's been behind as much as this team has been behind, to do so little no huddle is crazy. And I just I think that is an area where they really get bad scores for what they're doing on offense. Sometimes you got to hurry up just to change things up when things aren't going well. They haven't done it in those circumstances. And then sometimes you got to do it because you're behind. And look, he said, Well, you go 3 and out, you're giving them the ball back in 25 seconds. Well, that's a chance you got to be willing to take, because sometimes in those 25 seconds, you should be getting a very quick first down, and then look how well things are going. So why is he automatically looking at the downside of, if we go 3 and out, we're giving them the ball back in fast time? Well, what about the upside of what if you have 3 good plays to get a first down in 25 seconds? Then look how fast things are going. Look how you're speeding up the game and giving yourself an opportunity to do more quicker. I don't get it. Gets defense tired, Bryn is pointing out. You can change the complexion of a game by doing that. Teams can. The Titans can't. Doesn't seem like. And Ed's pointing out that, it's similar to how they talk about 3rd and long being kind of a lost cause and such a give up situation. Let's talk about Will Levis taking sacks. I think we have had some very thorough conversations about Will Levis, right? He's the number one topic really on this team, maybe outside of Callahan and Rand and Brinker and what's going to happen there. No, he's the number one topic. We talk about his strong arm and his quick releases being good things about the team, right? We talk about decision-making, pocket awareness is a bad thing about the guy, but we've talked, it's been pretty good since he's come back from the injury. Encouraging. One area I don't think we've hit on enough is his toughness, right? Now, the shoulder injury was kind of unnecessary with him. Go for a first down, but he throws his body around a little bit too much sometimes. This guy's taken 65 sacks in 18 games. 3.6 a game. That's in his career. 3.6 a game. That's unsustainable. Here's Callahan talking about Levis getting up.
Yeah, I think that's quarterback play. You're going to get hit in the NFL. The rushers are too good. The pressures are designed to hit the quarterback, and people do a good job of getting home. And you have to be able to, as a quarterback in the league, be able to stand in the pocket and take hits and get back up. And I think that's one of the things I've been most impressed from Will is his ability and his toughness as a quarterback in the pocket. He takes hits and he pops right back up and keeps rolling, and that's impressive. And it's hard for quarterbacks to show toughness the way other guys do, and that's the one way quarterbacks can is when they take a shot and get up and make a throw. That's a big deal.
I do think I've made the mistake of not including toughness with the quick release and the big arm. He's a tough guy, and there are quarterbacks who shrivel when they take an early beating. And he's taken an early beating, some of which is his fault. We've talked about that. He's got to get rid of the ball quicker. He's got to make decisions. I wrote an article earlier this week that you need to be reading at paulkuharsky.com about their plan to help him improve his pocket awareness. And that's an important part of this. And some of this is on him. Sacks are more of a quarterback stat than a lot of people think. But he's not flustered by this, David Carr is always the guy who's used as the example. I mean, he might have had a chance to be a decent quarterback, but playing in Houston, getting hit a billion times in one season, 77 in one season, I think. There's no way not to become gun shy in those circumstances. Now, Levis taken 65 sacks in 18 games. Could have had a really bad bearing on him, but it has not. I don't think it's changed anything about the way he plays. And I'd say that's a very, very positive development. So that's something to think about, to be enthused about. S. Rob says, kudos to Levis. His body clock should be screwed right now with the amount of hits he's taken. It's wild. It hasn't. And I think, that's something that maybe I'm guilty of underrating. So good job by him in that regard for sure. Let me remind you about Edleys. I'm here at Edleys at 5 Points in East Nashville. Food, it smells amazing. There's been a good lunchtime crowd today. 5 Points here in East Nashville, Sylvan Park, Donaldson, Franklin and Berry Farms. That's my home base. Franklin, the factory. Gallatin, 12 South Nolensville. Get the fried ribs are just unbelievable. We had Edleys at my house for Thanksgiving. It was fantastic. Look, all of these places are terrific. The service is terrific. The food is terrific. The price, very reasonable for what good food you're getting. I know a lot of you are Edleys regulars, so I consider you to make a stop in the next couple days. And those of you who haven't had the pleasure, make a point of getting out and visiting. You won't be disappointed. Take a date, take your wife, take your family, take a business associate for lunch. Cannot go wrong. S-Rob says, that's normally the first thing that goes when you see young quarterbacks' careers tank. Remember Mariota at the end would drop his eyes at the sign of a rush. Yeah, it got to Marcus. Marcus is a good example. And we were talking about some of these guys in the press room earlier this week, and did not remarkably think of Mariota as an example of it, but could have. So take a couple more questions here, and we'll call it a pod. I've been appreciate so many of you coming. S. Rob also says Mac Jones moved the ball in the fourth quarter Sunday and almost brought the Jags back for a W. Hard to put too much weight in it given the Texans' D. Will be interesting to see how he finishes the season. I also think that's a one-year contract for Mac Jones, so he's got a chance here with the remainder of the season to make some sort of impression and get himself involved in the conversation about, prime backup jobs or, competitive situations where he's got a chance to be in this tier of guys who, having sat in maybe better situations. I don't know how much better a situation that is with Press Taylor and Doug Peterson to learn, but it's a different atmosphere than New England was, certainly. So we see, if he's appealing to somebody as conceivably a bridge, conceivably competition for a rookie, conceivably a backup in a situation where he could get on the field like he's done, which he's done there. So we'll see. I'm not a fan of him, but I'm interested to see what he does. And again, Titans have lost to a lot of quarterbacks of similar ilk. He can build that resume at the Titans' expense. He's got them twice. So I'm surprised there hasn't been a lot of conversation about from people. I think it's because the quality of people that come to this podcast about wanting the Titans to lose this game. Be very, very healthy for the guys that are on this roster, a good share of which will be on next year's roster, to win this game. Jim McCann says, my 25th anniversary team was stellar, including Tim Shaw was significant because of his special teams play and his leadership. Who is a leader on today's special teams? He says no one. They would say Luke. He is a good special teams player. I don't think he's like Tim Shaw or who was Tim Shaw's partner on that team? Name's on the tip of my tongue. With two guys that they signed to anchor special teams at that stage, but they certainly didn't bring in guys like that for this team, which is a disappointment. Rashid asks, why not use Mason Kinsey? I think Mason Kinsey will be the punt returner in this game. And Logan says, rooting for losses is dumb. Makes zero sense. You don't play for the draft. I agree with that entirely. And Dwayne says, I'm going to the game. I don't want to sit through a loss, no matter the draft implications. I think that's really good. S-Rob with a parting shot here. Saw a picture today with the 2020 to 2022 draft classes. I saw that too. I bookmarked it on Twitter. Did I mention that Rand did not reshape the scouting department when he was brought on board? How is that possible given the track record? I don't know. They just love people. It really is ridiculous. So a very fair question that I'll ask Rand when he has his end of the year press conference and actually speaks. Be hard to get questions in on that. Jay says Mason Rudolph is a free agent and won't be returning. They will run with Levis and find a vet starter QB who can settle into a backup role. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee that Mason Rudolph won't be back. I don't know why you presume it. Nicholas says Titans special teams suck because they haven't had an elite athlete returning kicks since Pac-Man Jones. That's not having had a guy who smashed in a guy's face with a pool cue during his college career, and they drafted at number 6 overall since Pac-Man. So several things haven't happened since Pac-Man Jones's career. You don't have to have an elite athlete returning kicks in order to be good special teams. In fact, having an elite returner has nothing to do with your ability to cover kickoffs or cover punts. So I'm not sure. Yeah. Jay says they seem in on Levis, but not 100%. They don't have to be 100% at this point in time. We don't know. Mary Annie was a very good returner for a good stretch, but he was injured a lot. Look, it's not that hard. Like, first off, returns are not great in the NFL anymore. But secondly, it shouldn't be that hard to find a receiver or a defensive back that can consistently catch balls and get you 8 to 10 yards. And Jackson, his numbers aren't terrible, but I think his decision-making is not good. He goes side to side too much. He still seems to think he's faster than everyone. And there's nothing dynamic about what he does. So I think it's just a huge disappointment. He wasn't particularly good at Tulane. And so they saw him as a guy like, oh, we see something in him that we can develop. And they've not developed anything there. We'll end here with Logan saying, shout out to my producer. Since I brought him on the podcast, it's gone next level. I agree. And a huge thanks to JT Runke, who also gives you winning picks here. Trev wants to know if I consider a mustache. I will not. I think mustaches are foolish. Patrick Bailey is the name that I was looking for, a linebacker that teamed with Tim Shaw when special teams meant something to the Titans. Eat at Edleys Barbecue. Bet at Zen Sports. 2 sponsors that are very good to me. You're good to me. Let's all be good to them. Everything will work out. My thanks to JT. Stay tuned at paulkuharsky.com. We'll have a preview of the Titans-Jaguars game in which Blake Benningfield is going to tell us which of these 2 bad franchises he feels like is in better shape. I'm very curious to read that myself. Also, something on the state of Harold Landry will be coming. Then I will do a podcast Sunday from Nissan Stadium after all the press has gone home to be warm and to dry and to watch the Sunday night game. I will get some help from JT and podcast, talk about everything the Titans have said after everything the Titans have done against the Jaguars. I really appreciate your support. Don't block the box, and be sure to lock your locks. Be well.